My name is Natalie Pierce, I'm 26, and at Sunday dinner my father announced he was selling my medical AI project for billions, without even asking me. If you've ever faced something like this, comment where you're reading from. It was Sunday, 1834, roast chicken still steaming on the table, the smell of rosemary and garlic clinging to the air. I sat with my laptop bag at my feet, my fingers still stiff from coding all afternoon. Dad raised his glass of wine and smiled like a politician on camera. "I've decided," he said, his voice calm but booming. "We're moving forward with the sale. Pierce Global will license Natalie's algorithm to Helix Tech for $2.3 billion. Contracts are being finalized next week." The chatter around the table stopped. My fork slipped against porcelain with a shrill scrape. Mom gasped softly, my brother smirked into his drink. I clenched my fists. "My algorithm? The one I built? You didn't even ask." Dad chuckled, dabbing his mouth with a napkin. "Don't be dramatic, sweetheart. Family assets belong to the family. And I know how to close a deal better than you know how to write code." Heat rushed up my neck. He thought he owned me, my mind, my years of 3 a.m. debugging sessions, the data I'd protected behind encrypted servers. He thought he could turn it into his empire's next jewel. But he didn't know I had already set the trap. For weeks I'd prepared logs, autoscripts, timed releases of data packets that would detonate reputations if anyone tried to sell what was mine. I didn't speak then. I let him gloat, savoring his glass of Bordeaux like he'd already cashed the check. I didn't know yet that in just 11 seconds when he handed over my files, the entire facade of his empire would start to crack. 2 days later, Tuesday evening at 1910, the dining room turned into his stage again. The heavy chandelier above us buzzed faintly, throwing golden light across the mahogany table. Dad sat at the head, papers spread neatly in front of him. The faint smell of ink and roasted lamb filled the air. He tapped the first page with a manicured finger. "Here's how it works, Natalie. Helix Tech will wire the $2.3 billion into our holding company. Your algorithm becomes theirs. In exchange, you'll receive a small stipend, $200,000 annually, so you can keep tinkering in peace." My breath caught. A stipend? I didn't ask for a salary. It's mine. I never signed anything. My brother leaned back in his chair, smirking. "Come on, Nat. You coded in Dad's house on Dad's electricity. You owe him." The words burned hotter than the food cooling untouched on my plate. I stared at the thick folder Dad pushed toward me. The front page bore my project's name in bold. Synapse AI Predictive Diagnostics. My initials were watermarked faintly in the corner, like an echo of my ownership. "You can't do this," I said, my voice low, trembling only at the edges. "I already have," Dad replied. His tone was calm, dismissive. "Helix Tech is board signs Friday. You'll thank me when your work changes the world. Under my company's name. That's legacy, Natalie. That's family." The clock on the wall clicked over to 1917, each second ringing louder in my ears. I forced myself to unclench my fists. I wanted to scream, to flip the table. Instead I said, "Fine. Do what you think is right." He smiled, satisfied, as if he'd beaten me. But beneath the table my phone vibrated. A notification. Auto-trigger sequence armed. The trap was ready. I took a slow sip of water, the glass cool against my palm. Let him think I'd surrendered. Because soon the deal he bragged about would ignite a fire he couldn't contain. The algorithm didn't appear overnight. It was 6 years of sweat, sleepless nights, and small victories no one clapped for. At 20, while my college friends went out on Friday nights, I stayed in the lab, hunched over a humming Dell tower that smelled of dust and overheated plastic. My notebooks filled with messy sketches of neural networks. I built, tested, failed, rebuilt. By 22, I had a prototype that could diagnose early signs of neurological disorders with 87% accuracy, faster than any existing system. I was ecstatic. Dad wasn't. He only glanced at my screen, muttered, "Neat toy. But unless it makes money, it's nothing." That was always his way. My achievements weren't achievements until they could be stamped with the Pierce Global logo. In high school, when I won the state science fair, he told the audience I got my work ethic from him. In college, when I landed a $10,000 research grant, he told relatives, I showed her how to negotiate. At every milestone, he put himself in the spotlight, leaving me in the shadows of his legacy. Still, I pushed on. At 24, I improved Synapse AI's accuracy to 94.3%. I published a paper signed only with my name. For the first time, recognition was mine. Dad barely looked up from his stock reports. But when he realized tech companies were circling, sending partnership inquiries, requesting demos, his attitude shifted overnight. Suddenly, he introduced me at dinners as my daughter, the genius. He paraded me at conferences, bragging about our research. Except it wasn't ours. And now, with Helix Tech dangling billions, he saw his chance to absorb me fully into his empire. What was at stake wasn't just money. It was authorship, legacy, identity. If he sold Synapse AI, my name would be erased from the project I had bled myself into. I still remembered one night, 3:14 a.m. The lab lit only by the glow of code on my monitor. I'd whispered to myself, "No one will take this from me." That promise was the reason I started building the trap. Hidden triggers in the system, encrypted logs, timed data packets that would prove ownership and expose misuse. I hadn't told Michael, my closest lab partner, or Tara, my best friend. No one. The less they knew, the safer they were. Now, as Dad prepared to sign away my life's work, I clung to that old whispered vow. This time he wouldn't get the credit. This time he'd choke on it. The night before the Friday signing, I sat alone in the lab, the faint hum of servers filling the air like a heartbeat. The fluorescent light above me flickered every few minutes, buzzing faintly, a reminder of how long I'd lived in this room. On my desk lay a hard drive, matte black, warm under my palm. Inside it was my first piece of insurance. A log file stamped April 3, 2019, 2:11 a.m. The day I wrote the first working line of Synapse AI's diagnostic engine. My initials, N.P. sat in the metadata, my student email address embedded in the commit. I opened the file and scrolled. Each entry marked a milestone. June 17, 2019, patch for early motor neuron signals, 71% accuracy. September 22, 2020, integrated MRI data. Accuracy rose to 87%. March 8, 2022, clinical trial dataset processed, 94.3% confirmed. Every log carried my digital fingerprint. My name. My timestamps. Not a trace of my father. I scrolled further and paused at the line I'd hidden deep in the code. If unauthorized _transfer equals true trigger export _logs. The trigger would activate if anyone outside my approved devices copied the code. Instead of the algorithm, they'd get a full package of logs and ownership history, blasting to regulators, research boards, even the media. I closed the laptop slowly, the click of the lid echoing in the stillness. To test, I copied a dummy build onto a flash drive. The system chirped. 3 seconds later, my email pinged. Export successful. Package sent. I opened the attachments and smiled at the PDF title. Synapse for development. PDF. There it was. The evidence that would burn down any lie. I tucked the drive into a red envelope, labeling it only, if needed. At that moment, my phone buzzed with a text from Dad. Be ready to smile Friday. History's being made. I traced the edge of the envelope with my thumb. He had no idea whose history was actually about to be written. And when it happened, it wouldn't be his empire making headlines. It would be his empire crumbling. I made a choice. The trap wasn't just built. It was armed. Friday morning, 8:42. The city still damp from last night's rain. I sat in a cramped office on the 4th floor of a building that smelled faintly of old carpet and burnt coffee. Across from me, Dr. Klein, my former research supervisor, adjusted his glasses, squinting at the PDF I just sent him. The screen glowed between us. Line after line of logs, dates, accuracy rates, my student email, my initials stamped everywhere. This is yours, he said finally, tapping the screen. Undeniably. No one else could fake this depth of development. If Helix Tech tries to pass it off as theirs, you'll bury them. My pulse quickened. And if my father presents it as Pierce Global's? Dear. Klein leaned back, the chair creaking. Then he's walking into quicksand. These logs prove chain of custody. April 2019 to present. All under your identity. Courts don't care whose name is on the deed of a company. They care who wrote the code. That's you. I exhaled, my chest tightening less now. So if I release it? He interrupted softly. You won't just stop the deal. You'll scorch the ground. Regulatory boards, ethics committees, investors, they'll see exactly who built Synapse AI. They'll see how he tried to steal it. The clock on the wall clicked over to 8:59. Outside, a bus screeched to a stop, brakes squealing. Dr. Klein lowered his voice. Natalie, you realize what's at stake? Helix Tech's board is worth hundreds of billions. Your father's empire is tied to senators, hospitals, foreign investors. If you pull the trigger, it won't just collapse his deal. It will expose everyone attached. My hands trembled, but I gripped the edge of my folder. Good. He always said family legacy mattered more than truth. Let's see how legacy survives the truth. Dr. Klein nodded once, sliding the laptop back to me. Then you're ready. Just remember, once you start, there's no undo. I slipped the red envelope into my bag, the one labeled if needed. The paper edges scratched against my fingers, grounding me. By 10 o'clock, Dad would be in the glass conference room at Pierce Tower, pouring wine for Helix Tech's executives, boasting about our project. By 10:01, if he plugged in that flash drive, my code would tell the truth louder than I ever could. The countdown wasn't his. It was mine. Friday, 10 a.m. Pierce Tower's top floor gleamed with glass walls and polished steel. The air smelled of fresh polish and expensive cologne. I sat at the far end of the conference room, notebook closed, my badge clipped to my blazer. I wasn't invited to speak, just to observe. Dad stood tall at the head of the table, his voice smooth, commanding. Gentlemen, ladies, today Pierce Global makes history. Synapse AI, developed under our umbrella, is ready to change the world. Helix Tech's licensing offer $2.3 billion will cement our legacy. The Helix Tech executives leaned forward, pens poised. A senator's aide sat near the back typing notes. Cameras recorded everything, polished PR for future headlines. My stomach churned, but my face stayed calm. Beneath the table, my hand brushed the red envelope in my bag. Dad reached for the flash drive I had given him 2 days ago. His presentation copy. He slid it into the sleek silver laptop, smirking like he was unveiling a crown jewel. Let me show you what Pierce Global built. He clicked. The screen behind him flickered. For exactly 11. For seconds, the Synapse AI demo played flawlessly, graphs of diagnostic accuracy climbing, neural networks shimmering on screen. Gasps of admiration filled the room. Dad's smile stretched wide. Then the screen froze. A new window popped open, white background, black text. My voice, recorded days earlier, played over the speakers, calm and precise. This is Natalie Pierce, sole developer of Synapse AI. These logs prove my authorship from April 2019 to present. Any unauthorized sale of my work is fraud. PDFs began auto-opening across the big screen. Commit logs stamped with my initials. Bank transfers funding my servers. Draft papers signed only with my name. Gasps turned to murmurs. Phones whipped out. The senator's aide typed faster. Dad's face drained of color. Turn it off, he barked at the tech assistant. But every attempt only triggered another window. Emails, timestamp screenshots, encrypted logs. Helix Tech's lead executive leaned back, expression stone cold. Mr. Pierce, you didn't disclose sole authorship. This voids the deal. We'll need to notify compliance immediately. The senator's aide snapped a photo of the screen. This is evidence of misrepresentation. Dad's voice cracked, desperate now. It's family property. She worked under my roof. The audio cut him off. My recorded voice again. Synapse AI was built independently. Any claim otherwise is theft. Silence slammed the room. The weight of legacy collapsing. I sat perfectly still, my palms cool now, watching the empire he worshipped fold in on itself. The lever had been pulled, and the shock in his eyes was worth every sleepless night I'd coded alone. The fallout began before the meeting even ended. At 10:28 a.m., 3 Helix Tech executives walked out without shaking hands. Their legal counsel followed, phone already pressed to his ear. By 10:42, a statement leaked online. Helix Tech withdraws from negotiations with Pierce Global pending authorship investigation. The news spread faster than wildfire. By the time I left the building, my phone buzzed with push notifications. Pierce Global stock plunges 17% in 1 hour. My father's empire, decades of cultivated image, cracked in real time. That evening I stopped by a convenience store. The front page headline of the financial paper nearly glowed under the fluorescent light. Daughter's code, father's lies. Synapse AI scandal. I bought 2 copies, folded one neatly into my folder of evidence. At home the emails poured in. 3 universities offered to host my research. A nonprofit hospital in Seattle asked for a demo. Even an ethics board wrote, "Your transparency sets a new standard." But the consequences weren't just headlines. They were personal. At 21:14, Mom called, her voice trembling. "What have you done? Your father is furious. Investors are threatening lawsuits." I stared out my apartment window at the city lights. I protected my work. That's all. "You humiliated him," she whispered. "No," I said softly. "He humiliated himself." 2 days later, my brother showed up at my door, reeking of whiskey. His words slurred. "You ruined us. Stocks tanked. Dad says we might lose the penthouse." I let him rant, his voice echoing in my hallway. Then I handed him a bottle of water and said, "That penthouse was never mine. Neither was his empire. But Synapse AI was always mine." He didn't argue. He just stared at the floor, shoulders slumped, before stumbling back into the elevator. Meanwhile, my inbox grew. Journalists wanted quotes. Colleagues sent congratulations. One message stood out. Dr. Klein, subject line simple. Proud. The taste of freedom was sharp, like citrus cutting through years of bitterness. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like my father's shadow. I felt like my own light. And though his empire cracked, I knew this was only the beginning of what would fall. The last push came a week later. At 7:46 a.m., a courier slipped an envelope under my apartment door. Heavy, cream-colored, embossed with Pierce Global's seal. Inside, a cease and desist letter 5 pages thick. The words blurred as I skimmed, but the gist was clear. Natalie Pierce unlawfully accessed company servers, misrepresented authorship, and caused reputational harm. Immediate retraction required. I laughed once, sharp and bitter. The scent of my coffee filled the room as I flipped the pages, each line more desperate than the last. By 9 o'clock, my father himself called. His voice, usually booming, sounded brittle. "You've made a fool of us. Helix Tech is threatening to sue. Investors are pulling out. Retract your claims, Natalie. Admit it was family property." I sat at my desk, opened my laptop and clicked into the folder marked proof. With a few keystrokes, the April 2019 log glowed on screen. My initials, my student email, the timestamp. "You should know better than anyone," I said evenly. "Logs don't lie." He snapped. "You think screenshots make you untouchable?" "No," I replied. "But notarized records do." I dragged another file onto the screen. A PDF signed last year by Dr. Klein, verifying my authorship during peer review. The signature block glared back at me in crisp digital ink. Silence. Then his voice, low, almost pleading. "Natalie, you don't understand the damage. Decades of work. Our name. Our name." I cut him off, my tone calm, controlled. "You were willing to erase mine to polish yours. The truth doesn't erase me. It erases you." For a moment, all I heard was the faint shuffle of papers on his end. Then he muttered, "You'll regret this." I closed the laptop softly. "No. I regret trusting you." I let the silence linger until he hung up. The letter went into my fireproof box, not as a threat but as proof of his desperation. Their story had collapsed under the weight of facts, and there was nothing left for him to twist. The truth gap was sealed. Permanently. And with it, my father's power over me. It's March now, 2 months since the empire collapsed, and I finally feel steady. Most mornings begin the same. The soft hiss of my coffee machine at 6:30, the glow of my laptop as I open Synapse AI's new dashboard. The project is no longer chained to Pierce Global. It's registered under my name alone. I've partnered with a nonprofit hospital network. Our pilot program is already screening 1,200 patients a week. Each report that comes in feels like reclaiming a piece of myself. The calls from my parents have dwindled to silence. The last voicemail, Dad's voice hoarse clipped, simply said, You got what you wanted. Congratulations. I didn't save it. My boundaries now are simple, sharp, and non-negotiable. No signatures without my full review. No meetings where I am just the daughter. No compromises that erase my name. I've even started mentoring 2 graduate students. They remind me of myself at 20, messy hair, caffeine-fueled, full of ideas. When they asked why I was so insistent on documenting every version of their code, I only said, protect your work. No one else will. On Sundays, instead of family dinners under chandeliers, I walk along the river with Michael. The water smells faintly metallic, the breeze sharp against my face, but the rhythm of our steps steadies me. We talk about the next 6 months, finishing the hospital trials, applying for a patent extension, maybe a brief trip to Lisbon in the fall. I don't think in terms of revenge anymore. I think in terms of ownership, choice, control. This morning I sat at my desk, sunlight spilling across the scattered papers, and signed my name at the bottom of a new contract. My pen moved smoothly, each letter mine, every stroke firm. I am not my father's shadow. I am not his legacy. I am my own. And this time no one can take it away.